Welcome to Can You Believe It? We believe all truth is God's truth, whether that truth is found in social sciences, mathematics, physics, or chemistry. And our responsibility as scholars is to search everywhere matter and life exists and to find that which is truthful, wherever it may be found, analyze it and share it with all creatures, big and small, on God's green earth. We have been exploring the issue of race and the foundations of racism as we know it today. We have been asking the question, how did we get here? What went wrong with sons of mankind? I had promised to tackle the teachings of Jean-Baptiste Lamarck and Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Well, today is the day, but I will also reference the influence of Immanuel Kant and his influence on the issue of race as a caveat this time here. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck was a biologist based in France, and Jean gave us a logical explanation of the process of biological change under the influence of Jean-Jacques Rousseau around the year 1778. Lamarck expounded on the idea that living organisms are not passively altered by the environment, but rather the environment causes changes to the organism, or rather, the changes in the need of the organism is influenced by the environment. And as a result, the behavior of the organism changes. I can buy that argument. I don't know about you, but doesn't sound that bad. So Lamarck argued that the altered behavior of any organism therefore leads to a greater or a lesser use of a given structure or organ in the organism. All right? Simple. According to Lamarck, that is to say that use causes increase in size of the structure or organ, and the opposite is therefore true. For disuse causes the organ to decrease in size. I think you've had that argument over and over again in different circles, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But Lamarck strongly argued that disuse causes the organ or a particular part of the organism to decrease in size, or even disappear over several generations. And he also supported his argument by saying that the changes, whether large or small, were therefore heritable for that matter. So Lamarck documented all that in his book, Philosophy Zoologique, okay? Philosophy Zoologique, written in about 1809. So by the time of Darwin's Origin of Species, Lamarckianism or Lamarckism had become one of the major scientific theories about degeneration. Remember, we're talking about the issue of race, how we got here, and why some people think they're better than others, or one race may think or may have been, can refer to or infer to as being superior to the others. Environment was therefore credited as the ultimate controlling factor in determining careers of many people. Heredity fixes the organic characteristics of the individual, and the environment affects the modifications in that heredity. Simple and clear, once again. So we argued earlier in this series that it was indeed the teachings, or rather the philosophy of David Hume, the Scottish philosopher, lived around 1700 to 1776, who was among the first to profess the pre-Adamite theory of racism in his book, The Treatise of Human Nature, published in 1739. Hume advocated for the existence of a separate creation and the innate inferiority of those people who are non-whites. David Hume, great scholar, but a teaching that nobody should be able to support at this point. So in the mid 1700s, David Hume writes the following, and I want to quote him, direct quote from David Hume. I am apt to suspect the Negroes and in general all the other species of men to be naturally inferior to the whites. There was never any other complexion than white, nor even any individual eminent either in action or speculation, nor ingenious manufacturers among them, nor arts, no sciences. End of quote. That's David Hume talking about the Negroes or the Black people in the 1700s. Okay. Later, we find Thomas Jefferson echoing the same. And this is the same Jefferson that's responsible for the Constitution or the creation of the Constitution of the United States of America. Hume was applying his methodology of historical inductive reasoning that basically human nature was best studied by observations of human historical behavior. And from the European point of view, civilization had never existed outside Europe. Again, we know from history that was not true, a biased approach, but that's just the way it is. Well, it is that kind of truth folk, or the kind of rhetoric that developed the differences that existed in the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s to this very day. Well, does it mean then the absence of civilization, all right, made people to be lesser than who they are? That is the kind of teaching, again, that's originating back in the 1700s that made some to refer others as being subhuman just because they lacked resources and the mechanics to civilize themselves. So following in David Hume's footsteps, but adding and enveloping similar racist ideas into a whole system of philosophical thought was none other than one of my, I want to say, favorite philosophers by the name of Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant is living in lived in born in 1724, dying in 1804. Basically, Immanuel Kant became basically the person who essentially created a racist anthropology that was based on skin color. Kant introduced the term anthropology and moral theory to German science and philosophy. His classification of humans included four races based on the color of skin and climate conditions. Again, amazingly, Kant believed that all races of men were created by God. That's where he and I agree. But the characteristics of each were dependent upon climate. That second phrase there, that's where we disagree. Kant argued that climate determined the natural predispositions or character of each race. And once the process towards each racial disposition had began, it was irreversible. Existing races, therefore, and racial characteristics could not be undone by changes in climate or circumstance. So Kant's theory of race, therefore, corresponded to intellectual ability and intellectual limitations. Kant developed the typical color-coded races of Europe, Asia, Africa, and Native America, and differentiated them by their degree of innate talent from birth. According to Kant, or Immanuel Kant for that matter, the nature of the white race guaranteed its rational and moral order. Kant argued that the Caucasians were in the highest position of all creatures in terms of talent and intelligence, followed by the yellow-skinned folk, and then the blacks, and at the bottom were the red people. That's Immanuel Kant. Kant argued that those who were non-whites did not have the capacity to realize reason or to form rational moral ethics. However, if they wanted to achieve moral and ethical rationalism, perfectibility could only be achieved through education and education alone. So according to Kant, therefore, skin color was the evidence of the unchanging and the unchangeable moral quality, and also the ultimate measure of human free will. Only Europeans had the necessity, talent to be moral and to be self-educated. According to Immanuel Kant, Asians had some ability to be self-educating, but lacked the ability to develop abstract concepts. Well, there was no scientific backing to this, but they made the argument, and then an argument was accepted as the true measure. This will pinch a little bit, my fellow African brothers. Ready? Here it is. Kant argued that innately, the idle Africans could only be educated as servants to follow orders, but they must be kept in order by severe punishment and must be properly beaten with split bamboo canes. End of quote. Quote by Immanuel Kant again. This is Immanuel Kant in the 1800s. Now imagine his influence and his philosophy to colonialists who were coming to Africa. Imagine his influence to teachers and missionaries coming to Africa in the 1900s. What do you think they thought of these Africans? Because this was the philosophy and the science accepted by the most educated and learned institutions of the world. Kant continued to argue that the Native Americans were hopeless and could not be educated at all. Well, we see the results of his teachings and his philosophy and how the Inquisitionists and the people coming to the New Worlds treated the Red Indians and the people that they found living in these areas of the world. Furthermore, Kant also argued that the mixing of races should be avoided because it causes misfortune and damage. No data, just a statement made by somebody who had acquired a Ph.D. or some knowledge in something or in a particular world of knowledge, and it was taken as the cardinal rule. Well, we see this impact during the Jim Crow era in the American South, with interaction with the Negroes and the whites. It was forbidden to intermarry, even amongst slaves that were taken out of Africa to the Arabian or or by the Arabs. You know, the mistreatment of those Africans in the Arab world was just brutal, and they were not also allowed to marry or intermarry for that matter. The reason behind it, it's this teachings of Immanuel Kant that is taking shape in the 1800s. Let it be known that although Kant was a champion for the equality of all men and the civil rights, these rights were only for humans who had the ability to educate themselves and those who had acquired free will. There you go. So the non-moral agents lacked moral worth and became mere objects to be used as means to the end by others. The non-moral agents were nothing more but irrational animals whom superior moral agents could master and rule at will. Referring David Hume, Kant stated that the Negroes of Africa have by nature no feelings that rises above the trifling. Mr. Hume's challenges anyone to cite a single example in which a Negro had shown talents and asserts that hundreds of thousands of many of them had been set free. Still, not one was ever found who presented anything great in art or in science or any other praiseworthy quality. So fundamental is the difference between these two races of men. And it appears to be as great in regard to mental capacities as in color. So Immanuel Kant also generalized his depiction of non-personhood to Jews. Motives could be good or bad or moral only if they were not motivated by a desire for material benefit. For he saw Judaism as an inherently materialistic religion. That's Immanuel Kant again. Kant equated the Jewish people and religion with such undesirable traits as superstition and dishonesty, worldliness, and cowardice. 1800s thinking, which was totally wrong. So Kant revived old stereotypes that went back to the 12th century about the Jewish people. Remember, these were only stereotypes. There was no backing, no data to prove it. But this is what happens when somebody has power and somebody has been gifted or accredited a particular position. His role is to spread unity, not to spread division amongst people. But this time, driven by greed and by selfishness, we see Kant and all these other philosophers, David Hume, Hegel, again, their approach was not one to advance human development and human advancement, but one of division. His division of humanity revived the religious and racial hierarchies of the past. We can therefore argue that Kant took his earlier religious hostility towards the Jews and formulated the hostility in philosophical language as we read his books or his writings from those years. Who could have thought? David Hume, Immanuel Kant, or those scholars? That was their view, which was deeply embedded in racism. Kant set the stage for modern secular anti-Semitism and provided the framework for future anti-Semites, as did Hegel and Richard Wagner, who was a cultural hero for Adolf Hitler. So Kant taught physical geography and anthropology for 40 years. And during these 40 years, he indoctrinated his students and introduced a so-called scientific concept of race, which was basically a bunch of baloney, pure garbage, without any academic support or any data or any proper logical arguments. Through his writings and lectures, which he did for a period of 40 years again, Immanuel Kant successfully instilled some of the most potential classifications of humanity into the minds of inexperienced and unsophisticated readers and students. Kant was such an influential force for centuries. To this very day, he is. Jablonski, referencing the power of Immanuel Kant, states, in the history of humanity, a few intellectuals constructs have carried so much weight and produced such a river of human suffering. Here is the heart of the matter when it comes to Immanuel Kant. Believe it because it is on the basis of Kant's philosophy of moral theory that German Nazism was founded. German Nazism was founded on Kant's moral theory. Modern moral theory and modern racial theory have the same father, who is none other than Immanuel Kant. Let's stop there for today. This has been Can You Believe It? Where we believe that all truth is God's truth. And our responsibility as scholars and as students is to search for that truth and to find it wherever it may be found. We go deep under the pressures of the waters to the bottom floor, scoop some sand, fine sand, and bring it to the surface for inspection. And after that, we share it to the rest of the world so they can also be informed about our past and our present and where we are going towards the future. Be a life changer. Change some life for the better for the moment you are here. Thank you.